Did you know in order to evolve Feebas to Melodic in Pokemon Sapphire, you need to raise its beauty stat in contests? Today, we'll be looking at 24 obscure secrets just like this in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. So to evolve any normal Pokemon, you just have to raise its level by battling other Pokemon in the wild for XP, use rare candies, or an evolution item such as a stone, but in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, Feebas evolves in a unique way. Now first things first, we'll have to find and catch a Feebas, which is tricky in itself. To find it, you have to go to Route 119 where it can only be obtained through fishing, but you can't fish in just any spot, as out of the estimated 400 squares of water on Route 119, Feebas only appears in 6 of them. These 6 squares are entirely random, so asking somebody else where they got Feebas from won't help much. Also, every time you change the trendy phrase in Dewford Town, the 6 squares are randomized again, so if you fish in one place at least 6 times with a super rod and you haven't encountered a Feebas, then you're probably not on the right square. On the bright side, once you find the Feebas squares, you'll notice that it is actually quite common. Feebas appears approximately 60% to 80% of the time in those 6 specified squares, so be sure to catch more than one, but just like finding Feebas, evolving it isn't very easy either, as you have to get its beauty rating to 170 and then have it grow a level. The main problem is that there is no numerical representation of your Pokemon's beauty rating, and the only way to raise beauty is by feeding Feebas Pokeblocks. Pokeblocks are used to raise 5 different aspects of your Pokemon: smartness, cuteness, coolness, beauty, and toughness, and only 2 types of Pokeblocks raise beauty, blue or indigo. But before making the Pokeblocks, you should check what your Feebas's nature is, as certain natures accept certain colors of Pokeblocks. If your Feebas is rash, quiet, modest, or mild, you're in luck, as these natures love dry Pokeblocks, which is what blue and indigo are. If your Feebas is impish, careful, or adamant, don't even bother trying to evolve him, as these natures hate dry Pokeblocks, and if your Feebas is any other nature, it should still evolve as long as you feed it high quality Pokeblocks. To make blue and indigo Pokeblocks, you need certain berries, and the only berry that makes the blue Pokeblocks is the Wiki Berry, and the berries that make the indigo Pokeblocks are the Kelpsy, Hondu, Palm Tree, and Cornberry. In order to get the best Pokeblocks, you should blend your berries in the Lily Cove contest hall, and once your Pokeblocks are formed, they should be at least level 23. If your Pokeblocks come out lower than that, try using a different berry, but if you feed Feebas 12 Pokeblocks, which is the maximum, all above level 23, then he is sure to evolve once you raise him by 1 level. Now this next secret is way more interesting. In Moss Deep City, players can enter Steven's house and find a locked door. Many people have speculated this is just a normal door, and just like many others in the game, is inaccessible, and despite players' curiosity, there's no known legitimate way to unlock the store or access what lies beyond it in the game. It's one of the many mysteries that Pokemon fans have speculated about over the years, but it seems to serve no purpose in the game's storyline or gameplay. Others believe that this door leads to a secret room with an item, but it can't be opened without an event item distributed by Nintendo. Allegedly, the locked door was only opened by a few players during a mystery event on Pokemon Ruby's release, in which you needed to use an e-reader, a link cable, and a second GBA to swipe a trainer card that was given by Nintendo during the event. After that happens, the trainer on your card will be in the room, and if you defeat him, you will receive the dive move. The Eon Ticket is a key item that allows players to access Southern Island, where they can catch Latios in Pokemon Ruby and Latias in Pokemon Sapphire. Unfortunately, it cannot be obtained normally in game, as it was only given away during a promotional event, and the Aurora Ticket was also given away at various events in order to give access to Birth Island in Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Emerald, which is the only way to get access to Deoxys. And while we're on the topic of legendary Pokemon, did you know that in Emerald you can fight and catch Rayquaza before defeating the Elite Four? Once you have summoned Rayquaza to Sootopolis City, head to Pacific Log Town and surf east, then follow the north border until you find a place where you can head past some rocks. You'll see the beach and follow the path until you reach a huge tower called the Sky Pillar. The Sky Pillar is full of cracked floors, so ensure you have the match bike with you. Rayquaza will be at the top of the tower and will always be level 70, so make sure to bring some Ultra Balls and your best Pokemon. Speaking of towers, did you know that only in Emerald, a place called the Mirage Tower will appear in the desert area on Route 111, but it only exists on certain days? In this tower, players can find rare items inside, such as the root fossil and the claw fossil. The Mirage Tower's location in Hoenn that will disappear and reappear in the desert on Route 111 at random times as the player visits and leaves the route. But when we're talking about rare occurrences in the Hoenn region, we should also talk about the Mirage Island. Mirage Island appears in Pacific Log Town on Route 130, and the reason why it's on this list is because the island has a tree where the one and only Lychee berry in the game can be picked. This is the best berry for Pokeblocks and will produce gold Pokeblocks. Now trying to find and get to Mirage Island is interesting as it is only ever accessible under the most specific circumstances. In order to reach Mirage Island, a player must first talk to the NPC Old Man Jerry, who has a 1 in 12 or 8.33% chance of telling the player that he sees Mirage Island. If he says that he cannot see the island, then the player must wait until 24 hours have passed and then they can try their luck again. However, if the player is lucky and Old Man Jerry says he can see the island, Route 131 to the east of town will be replaced with the alternate map, Route 131B. Traveling north on that route will lead the player to Mirage Island, and they have 24 hours from the moment when the Old Man Jerry first sees the island to explore it. Once 24 hours have passed, Route 131B will transform back into the regular Route 131, and if the player is in Mirage Island at the time, they will be forcibly removed at the next area transition. But in order to actually gain access to the island, every day at midnight, a random number going up to 65,535 is generated, and if this number matches what the personality value of your Pokemon is when divided by 65,536, you will be granted access to the island for a day. Also, as a hidden bonus, the only Pokemon occupying this island is Wynot. In the Japanese versions of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, by using the Acro Bike to side hop north or south onto a tile adjacent to a water tile and then pressing A at the exact right frame, the player can bring up the surf dialog box while facing a regular tile on land. Answering yes will cause the player to surf onto that tile, and the player can then surf around on land and the game will still behave as if the player is walking normally. This bug can also be used to enter the Fortree Gym without the Devon Scope if it is performed on Route 119 and the player surfs north to Fortree City, as the gym is normally blocked off from the north by an invisible Kecleon. While surfing in Fortree City, the player can jump off their Pokemon from the bridge south of Fortree Gym and access the gym from there. Now this next secret is one that you definitely missed when playing the Gen 3 games. Did you know that when riding the cable car on Mount Chimney in either direction, there's an approximately 1 in 64 chance of seeing a hiker, camper, or picnicker walking up the mountain? Even though it doesn't really mean anything, it's nice when Pokemon takes the time to make their games feel more natural by adding these little hidden details for us to look back on. When setting sail on the SS Tidal, looking through one of the windows after a quick nap in the cabin when traveling from Lily Cove to Slateport rewards you with this cutscene of the ship cutting through the rapids on the way to your destination. And I know it's nothing big, but I definitely never knew about this. Remember how with the first secret in this video you needed a palm tree berry to evolve Feebas? Well, this next secret is one of the ways you can get this berry. By speaking to the Berry Master's wife on Route 123 every day in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, players can receive various rare berries. She will ask you for a phrase once a day with a total of 5 phrases, and if you give the correct answer in all caps, you will receive a berry that increases a contest condition, such as the Spelon, Wantmill, Baloo, Durin, and Pamtree berries. And if you give her the wrong answer, you'll get a common medicinal berry. So in order to get the Spellin berry, you must type in Great Battle in all caps, and in order to get the Pamtree berry, you must type in Challenge Contest in all caps. To receive the Wantmill berry, you must type in Overwhelming Latias in all caps. To get the Durin berry, you must type in Cool Latios, and typing the word Super Hustle will give you the Baloo berry. Another hidden detail in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald is that Shoal Cave on Route 125 has tides that change based on time. Every 6 hours the tides rise or fall, so high tide is from 9 AM to 3 PM and from 9 PM to 3 AM. And low tide is from 3 AM to 9 AM and 3 PM to 9 PM. During high tide, the cave floods and only 2 rooms are available. In these rooms, certain items like shoal shells can be found by using surf. Shoal salt can be found during low tide, which can be exchanged for rare items like the shell bell or the deep sea tooth. Also, during low tide, you gain access to the rest of the cave from the previously unreachable areas. Both of these areas have unique items, so it's definitely worth it to explore the cave at low tide and high tide. I can guarantee that you have never heard about this next secret. Did you know that in the Battle Pike in the Gentleman's Room, when his Pokemon, which is either Corellia or Dusclops, attacks, if the player does not press any button, normally 2 text boxes will be activated. But if the player presses the A or B button when the Pokemon approaches, a 3rd text box will activate, ordering the Pokemon to stop. This happens because when the player enters the room, the Pokemon approaches so quickly that the game can no longer load all the text boxes in time. Did you know that only in Ruby and Sapphire, if your Pokemon somehow deals over 33,037 damage, the opposing Pokemon will faint without the HP bar running out, and if you deal exactly 33,037 damage, the HP immediately hits 0 with no animation. Now in all 3 of the games, it's possible for the capture tutorial where Wally catches a Ralts to end with Ralts fainting. This can happen if Zigzagoon is genned with 11 attack and the wild Ralts has a defense lowering nature, an IV of 3 or less in HP, and an IV of 5 or less in defense. With all this, Zigzagoon can do a maximum of 10 damage with its first tackle, and after Growl is used, 7 damage with its second tackle. This makes for a total of 17 damage, which is just enough to defeat Ralts, and when Ralts faints, the game will progress normally as if Ralts had been caught. Oh, and by the way, the probability of this happening is 0.01%. Most people know that in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, the PokeMart Clerk in Oakdale Town normally gives out a potion, and if you have a full bag when this happens, they won't give it to you. But if the player enters Route 103 and then immediately returns to Oakdale, the worker will be next to the PokeMart and will act like they were in their original position. Talking to the clerk again will lead the player into a tree above the mart, but you can walk out as they are only a tile away from the path. On Route 134, if the player surfs on the current near Swimmer Laurel or Swimmer Jack and is spotted by them, when the battle is over, the player will remain stationary despite being in the middle of the current. I don't think I ever came across this glitch when playing the Gen 3 games, but let me know if you have. In the seafloor cavern, in the second to last room, there's a boulder puzzle that requires the strength ability in order to push the boulders out of the way so that the player can enter into the next area. But if you try to push the second to last rock out of the way, instead of sliding it upwards, the rock multiplies and another stone appears out of it, making it impossible to clear a path to where the player needs to go. Anybody can complete this glitch, so to begin, the boulders need to be arranged like this. Then walk all the way down to the bottom of the room. And once you walk back up, you'll see that the boulder on the left in the very top row has slid down one space, and the boulder on the right of the top row has disappeared entirely. Now when you try to push the second boulder from the right, it'll stay where it is while creating another boulder above it. What's even crazier is that a real-life pet beta fish found this secret 18 years later after Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald were released by randomly inputting commands in the game while swimming. Now if you're thinking, how can a fish play Pokemon? Well, let me explain. The channel that found this glitch runs 24/7 live streams of fish just like this one playing different Pokemon games with a laser pointed system attached to the fish, which is registered to a button every time the fish swims over it. This is similar to how Twitch streamers allow their chat to control what they press in the games they play by typing certain phrases. Now in Ruby and Sapphire, 2 tiles of the wall near the entrance of Dewford Gym behave like the statues across from them. When you approach them and press the A button, it says Dewford Pokemon Gym, Brawly's certified trainers, and after Brawly's defeated, it will list the player as a certified trainer. What's happening here is that the events of the statues are being duplicated onto the walls. Interestingly enough, the code which executes on interactions is the same between both the left and the right side, but has been duplicated as well. Did you know that also in Ruby and Sapphire, Chikorita is not required to obtain the National Pokédex Diploma? This happens because the game simply doesn't properly check for ownership of Chikorita, and while Trico is also not required for the National Pokédex Diploma, he is required for the Hoenn Pokédex, which prevents the glitch from happening. Nobody really knows why you don't need Chikorita, but apparently something was overlooked here in the game's development. I guess even the game knows that Chikorita is the worst starter. In the Japanese versions of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, if the player places a sand ornament against the wall in a secret base and collapses it by pressing the A button, adds a 1 tile or 3 tile poster behind the ornament, then exits and returns to the secret base, the bottom half of the ornament will not appear to have crumbled and it will still have the poster behind it. When the player crumbles a sand ornament again, the wall tile and part of the poster that was placed behind the sand ornament will disappear. In international versions of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, as well as all versions of Pokemon Emerald, posters can't be placed on a wall directly behind a sand ornament even if it is collapsed. The wrong amount of Pokemon dollars received from the move Payday will be displayed if the amulet coin is held by a Pokemon, leaving the impression that the amulet coin did not double the number of coins picked up from Payday. But when checking the trainer card, the player will discover that the amount was actually doubled accordingly. When Thief or Covet are used to knock out a Pokemon holding an item that also has the sticky hold ability, the sprite of the defeated Pokemon becomes stuck and gets translucent until another screen is loaded. Now if you switch to the bag screen or the Pokemon list, it will disappear, but we can actually go deeper into this glitch. On a battle against a full party, defeating the next Pokemon will cause that Pokemon's sprite to vanish normally, but the stuck sprite will remain. If the second Pokemon is defeated without leaving the battle screen, a third Pokemon will come out, but the second Pokemon sprite will be flushed out normally and the stuck sprite of the first Pokemon will remain and get recolored to match. This is because the game stores color palettes separately from the sprites themselves. Did you know that if a Pokemon uses a multi-strike move other than triple kick against a target with an ability that inflicts a status condition on contact, and the move's user triggers this ability with the move's final strike, there's a 1% chance that the target also becomes afflicted by the status condition inflicted by their ability. Yeah, I didn't know it either. By selecting Focus Punch in a double battle on the first Pokemon, pressing the B button and then recalling the first Pokemon will tighten its focus in preparation for Focus Punch, then be recalled. This happens because the priority of Focus Punch is higher than the priority for the recall. Now for this last secret, we're going to talk about Team Aqua. In the Japanese version of Pokemon Emerald, in the Submarine room of the Aqua hideout, there are water tiles that look like deep water on which the player can use Dive. While the player normally can't use Dive on these tiles, they can if they save the game and reset while in this room. If they do use Dive, they will be warped to Petalburg City, walking out the door of the house next to the lake. In Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, the player can't access the Aqua or Magma hideout after they gain the Mind Badge, which is required to use Dive outside of battle, and in international versions of Emerald, the player can't use Dive here even after saving and resetting. Now if you've learned something new, maybe consider subscribing, and I'll see you later.